Welcome to the Do Good X podcast, a sanctuary from the entrepreneurial grind. Hosts Kimberly Danielle and Steven Lewis, advocates for impactful entrepreneurship, guide you on the path where purpose meets business. Join us to slow down, reconnect, and explore the challenges of under-resourced entrepreneurs, uncovering the unique journey of building businesses that make a difference. Now, your hosts.
Welcome to the Do Good X podcast. My name is Steven Lewis, and I'm a catalyst for positive change in communities and businesses. And for over 2 decades, I have inspired leaders and entrepreneurs to live and work on purpose with intention, faith, and a commitment to their well-being. And as always, I'm joined with my co-host, Kimberly. Hey, Kimberly.
Hi, Steven. I am Kimberly Danielle to those of you who are tuning in, especially for the first time. And I am a community builder, a coach, and a communication strategist who comes from generations of faith-driven leaders and entrepreneurs who believe that our purpose should drive us to contribute to the common good. Today's episode, we're going to be chatting about something that we have not talked about before, which is supply chain. And sometimes it sounds way bigger than it feels relevant for some entrepreneurs who are, especially if you don't have a product per se. Sometimes people don't think about it when they're just offering services. Or if you're in the early stages of your business, it may not necessarily be something that you have thought about. But every entrepreneur should be aware of a supply chain because you do have one. No matter what you offer, you have one. And you'll recognize that, or hopefully you will recognize that a bit throughout this episode and this conversation that Steven and I have. Now, if this is a new term for you, a supply chain is just really the entire system or process of producing and delivering your product or service. So developing that product or service to delivering it to your customers. And talking about supply chain right now really matters, especially in this economy where costs can be really unpredictable. Sourcing specific materials, I know, can be challenging, and a lot of businesses have had to adjust. And small businesses are being asked to do more with less. So today we're really just kind of going to graze the surface of this topic, but it primes a deeper conversation we'll have in a later episode that's to come. So putting that out there so that you stay tuned for that too. Steven, when you think about some of the conversations that you've had with entrepreneurs, whether they be founders in Do Good X or out in the larger community, and they say they don't really have a supply chain, what do you think that they are overlooking, especially if we're focusing on at the early stages of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, as a preface, is that we oftentimes take supply chain for granted, and that became apparently clear, particularly during the pandemic. Things that we normally think we can get readily and accessibly, was very challenging to do that, from toiletries and other types of things or whatever. But when, we talk about supply chain, sometimes we oftentimes think too narrowly. We think about kind of like the big industry types of things or whatever. But I think they picture supply chains as solely as physical goods on move, instead of the reality that anything that you rely on to deliver value is part of your supply chain. So for service-based businesses, that might be software or contractors or payments or systems and your own time. When one of those areas become unstable or more expensive, it immediately affects your ability to serve your client, stay profitable, or even retain your clients as well.
Yeah, and I mean, we are still seeing, and I'm seeing with some people that I've talked to who are entrepreneurs, how they are recovering from the past year or so and still navigating or figuring out what to do around rising costs
Mhm.
and tighter access to capital. there's much capital, but it's a bit tighter, especially depending on what your business is. And some entrepreneurs often get blindsided in this kind of economic climate because they don't realize how much of their business might depend on one vendor or material or platform or even a person until something just changes. Prices go up, like we've seen, maybe some timeline shift because you don't have access to some type of material or resource, and maybe even availability might disappear.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we don't always think about the arc of it either, right? So, you're talking about manufacturing, the cost of actually building or providing your service. And, something as small as storage space and the price changing on that, particularly if it's a technological solution or whatever, like can really disrupt your supply chain. So thinking about manufacturing, how you then and where you store your goods or services, the delivery of those goods and services, from whether you actually have a delivery service or if you actually get on the plane and going to present or deliver a service itself. Like all those things can be a part of your supply chain. And in this economy, those changes happen faster and often with less warning. So, what used to be a minor inconvenience can suddenly turn into a serious financial issue. Now, if you're new to the concept of supply chain, it often has several foundational areas than the ones that I've named, but we won't go into the 7 areas today. But it starts with purchasing, which provides the resources and the materials needed to develop a product or a service. And while it's not the end of the process, the last key area is often customer service to make sure that customers are satisfied with the product or the service that they have received from you. So, purchasing and customer service are just two of those 7 areas. But to think about it more generally, if you go through a journey, you got to think about your inputs, your materials, and your resources, the activities that are needed to kind of manufacture, develop the products or the services that you're creating. Second one is process, developing the products or services. Third one is delivery, providing your product or service to your actual customers. And then there's, several more that we could actually talk to. But the point is that it's important to think about the arc of your supply chain from inputs to process to delivery, because these things can directly impact your business profitability, its risk, its resilience, the customer experience, and your overall sustainability of your business as a whole.
Yeah, that's really good. And I mean, this really just touches the tip of the iceberg. And when you're thinking about those different aspects of the supply chain, it's not just where you're sourcing it from. It's not just around costs, but for us at Do Get X, it's also about your values that you are upholding in every part of your supply chain, from the inputs to the delivery to your customer. And even after that, how are you listening to your customer to get them to come back again or to get them to refer your business to others? And so I want to encourage you to also, take into consideration your values as well. And, we'll dive in a bit more with a guest in a later episode. But in the meantime, for those of you who are maybe new to the entrepreneurial journey, or you're listening to this episode and you're thinking, oh, I need to really actually think more about my supply chain. I need to do a little bit of research. I need to be thinking about these different aspects that I've heard on this episode. I invite you to just take 5 minutes and do a quick snapshot of a super simplified. Now I'm saying this is super simplified supply chain, but it'll get your wheels turning. So I want you to take a moment. If you're driving, you'll have to come back to this. But when you have a moment to jot some notes down or take some notes in your phone, I want you to think about one person your business relies on. One person your business relies on. And then one tool, material, or platform that you depend on. your business depends on specifically. One tool, material, or platform. And lastly, one process to develop or deliver your product or service. This might be how you onboard a client. This might be how you fulfill a product, and what occurs in that process. So again, one person your business relies on, one tool, material, or platform, and then one process to develop and deliver your product or service. And then just ask yourself 2 questions. If one of these changed suddenly, it could be due to pricing, availability, or whatever it might be. But if one of these changed suddenly, what would I need to adjust first? Now that's thinking about if some type of challenge came up. Alternatively, you could have a large opportunity, but it's also a challenge. So the second question is to consider if demand for your business increased by, let's say, 25 to 50% over the next 6 months. What would need to change and how your product or service gets developed or delivered? So one's thinking about that challenge and something immediate happening, and the other one is thinking about really scale, sustainability, and the great possibility and opportunity for your, if your business were to succeed and grow, maybe faster than what you think it will. So these are 2 questions that I encourage you to think about, both from a risk perspective and a growth perspective. And again, it's a very simplified way of kind of looking at an aspect of the supply chain for your business. Steven, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share?
No, I mean, I think those are really good reflection questions, and just again, a reminder that it's really thinking about how do you take your goods or services and get them out of your hand to your customer, and thinking about all the process, how that happens, and who are the people that are necessary to make that happen. What happens when those things are impacted, and what is your backup plan to ensure that your product or service gets from your hands to the hands of your actual customer. And just remember that supply chains isn't about building something complicated. It's about understanding what your business depends on and making thoughtful choices before pressure forces them otherwise.
Yes, because things happen. Something inevitably is going to happen. And so, as much as you can, be thoughtful about your choices in your supply chain and think about risk and growth. Do that. Do that. And hopefully today's episode has given you something to walk away with, an insight, a tip, something to do further research on or further reflection on. And also, if it's brought up some questions for you, or you want to go deeper in how you build your business with intention alongside others, you can visit dogoodx.org to connect with our community and resources for founders like you who are building businesses for good. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this podcast community. And we hope that you join us in the next episode. Until then, be well and do good.
Thank you for listening to the Do Good X podcast. To continue the conversation or access our resources, visit www.dogoodx.org. Join us again for conversations that will nourish your soul, ignite your dreams, and empower you to build an impactful business, one intentional step at a time. Until then, keep striving, thriving, and doing good.